What's up, Tailgaters? A year in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. The road to predict all 136 FBS level college football teams this summer is taking us back to the Los Angeles area, where we are in Pasadena, California at the Rose Bowl to talk about the UCLA Bruins. And after a roller coaster season last year, this is a program looking to take a step up in year two as member institution of the Big Ten Conference. My name is Nate Bobe, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate, and I want to thank y'all so much for clicking on this video and for helping to support the channel. If you would like to support the channel even further, then please go down below this video, hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, you might as well ring the bell. Turning on notifications will ensure you don't miss an upload during prediction season, especially not one of your favorite team. I am a sports media graduate delving into the professional world of the industry, and if you want to see all the cool stuff I get to do while still being up to date what goes on this very YouTube channel, then you can give me a follow on Twitter or X, whatever you prefer to call the platform, and Instagram. It's at tailgatenate29, and even email me at tailgatenate29@gmail.com. I want to thank you all so much for supporting or interacting with me or the channel in whatever way you may be doing so. And with all that said and done and out of the way, we're in the Rose Bowl, Pasadena, California. The UCLA Bruins are on tap for 2025 predictions, and we'll talk about them and their head coach, Deshaun Foster. A little bit of an up and down season last year, but you did finish 5-7. Overall, I would call it, based on relative expectations, I would call it a relative success. Obviously, the goal to make a bowl game, you wanted to be a lot better of a team than you were last season. That goal can be achieved this year. You got a lot of exciting pieces, including this man right over here to my left. We'll talk about him in a second, but you are having to replace a lot of pieces, and there still are a lot of questions surrounding this program. How do we do preview predictions here on the channel? Well, we are going to go through a roster overview, in which case the offense will be over here to the left and the defense will be over here to the right. At the end of the video, we are going to talk about the UCLA Bruin football schedule. I will give it a game-by-game preview and prediction, and this video overall is going to tell you what I think about the UCLA Bruins here in 2025. Before we get started, right down below me, returning production numbers are, according to ESPN. They do factor in transfer portal additions up to a certain percentage, and then right down below that, recruiting and transfer portal ranks for the class of 2025 are according to 24/7 Sports. With all of that said and done and out of the way, Tino Sunseri and the UCLA offense. Let's kick it off with talking about the quarterback situation. Ethan Garbers is gone. 2,723 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 11 picks. A roller coaster season for him. Saw some ups, saw some downs, but he did show enough to be able to be taken a chance upon by an NFL team. That would be the Carolina Panthers, who Ethan Garbers has gone off to join. The whole situation in the Knoxville area has led to Nico Iamaleava landing with the UCLA Bruins. It was originally going to be Joey Aguilar, an App State transfer, who I still would have loved for this UCLA team because I like Joey Aguilar and I like everything he can bring. But bringing in Nico Iamaleava, as well as his brother Madden, has transferred over to the team, but Nico is going to be that starting quarterback. Nico, the talent has always been there, and what I've always said about this UCLA team is it's not a question to me of how good Nico is going to be, but what are the pieces around him going to be, and we're going to talk about that later. But as far as Nico goes, I think he's flashed a lot of potential. Touchdown to interception ratio was great, but I think overall you can see some improvement in terms of production. 2,616 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions during his first season as a full-time starter with the Tennessee Volunteers last season, helped lead them to a college football playoff appearance. Now, Nico did have some not so good moments and not so good games during his time. I think he's going to continue to progress and grow. Now, is Tino Sunseri going to be the right guy for that? Again, you were in a really good offensive system with Josh Heupel over there at Tennessee, so we'll see what his progression looks like here. I think he's going to take some sort of step forward, but to me, it's a little bit of a mystery in how that is going to happen. I know he's going to improve, but is that touchdown to interception ratio going to stay where it's at? Does that passing yardage increase? Can he get over 65% completion percentage, where he was close last year at 63.8? I think we're going to see him improve. How we see him improve, I'm going to be very, very curious to watch. And I'll say it again. To me, it is not a question of how good Nico is going to be, because I do expect improvement and I do expect him to effectively lead this offense. But the pieces that surround him, I think there are a lot of question marks there. So Your lead rusher from last year in TJ Harden is going to be gone. He is now with Rhett Lashley and the SMU Mustangs. 506 yards and a pair of touchdowns for him last season. And you do lose a lot of other depth pieces in this room as well. However, Jalen Berger is going to come back. So that's a very nice piece there. Javion Thomas. That's the name you want to watch in the running back room this year. He is coming over from Cal, and Cal got their running back room absolutely decimated. 626 yards and 7 touchdowns as the leading rusher for the Golden Bears last season. So that is, I think, a big pickup out of the transfer portal. I really like Javion Thomas, and while I don't know if he has as high as upside of TJ Harden, because TJ Harden is the guy personally that I like a lot, I think he'll be a good fit over at SMU. I still think Javion Thomas is a really, really good player, and he'll fill in this running back room pretty nicely. Now, the wide receiver room, the pass catching room overall, definitely going to be some question marks there. You lose two immensely talented pieces when J. Michael Sturdivant is going to be gone, and one of the more experienced weapons in all of college football as far as wide receivers go. 315 yards and a pair of touchdowns for him last year. You're also going to be losing Logan Loya, who had 348 yards and 4 touchdowns, was your leading receiver among true wide receivers last season. And then you take a look elsewhere. The TJ Harden was actually your second leading receiver last year. So that's a part of the game where you do lose with TJ Harden as well. And even though Javion Thomas can have that in his game, it is not as prevalent, in my opinion, as what you see out of TJ Harden. There are some notable returners coming back to this room, though. Quasi Gilmer is going to be coming back. And I will butcher this name, so I apologize in advance. But Titus Mokiao Atima-Lala. He is going to be coming back to this team. Quasi Gilmore was excellent as a true freshman for UCLA last year, so as a true sophomore, he could very well be that lead weapon. You do have some solid portal pieces coming in. Mikey Matthews is over from Cal again, formerly of Utah, where he's had just over 500 yards and a touchdown on 60 catches throughout his collegiate career. You also are bringing in Jaden Wilson over from Arkansas, where he had 199 yards and a pair of touchdowns with the Razorbacks last season. I don't think it's overall going to be as talented of a wide receiver room as we saw last year, but I do think, again, there are a lot of good pieces. I think Gilmer's a good piece. I think, again, I'm not going to try to pronounce that name again for fear of butchering it, which I probably did already. So you know what? I'll double down on it. Mokiao Atima-Lala, I think he's another solid piece. And again, these portal pieces led by Mikey Matthews, I think is the best one of the bunch. I still think it's going to be a pretty solid wide receiver room. Should be a space in this next one. There you go. That's probably a little bit better. Your lead tight end in Moliki Matavao is going to be off to the NFL, and he was your lead receiver last year in every facet besides touchdowns. 41 catches, 502 yards, and besides J. Michael Sturdivant, besides J. Michael Sturdivant and Rico Flores, he was the most among qualified receivers, the leader in yards per catch, 2 touchdowns last year as well. So you are losing your star tight end. He is going to be gone, again, off to the NFL. So Hudson Habermel is going to be leading this tight end room. Jack Peterson is back there. You do get a transfer in Jake Renda, who is coming over from Pittsburgh. So you do still have some solid pieces here, but I do think there's going to be a little bit of a tight end battle to go on with this UCLA team. And as far as the offensive line goes, only 2 starters return on the O-line. Transfers are going to help, but the offensive line, if you want this offense to be as successful as it can be with Nico Iamaleava, especially if you want to see him take a big step in the right direction, this offensive line has got to get better. They allowed 34 sacks last season, and this is a rush team that this is a rushing game that only had 3.1 yards per carry last season. Every single metric of that has got to get better, I think, for this offense to be as good as it can possibly be. Talk more about the offense later. Defensively, let's talk about your defensive coordinator, Ika Malo, and I apologize if I pronounced that name incorrectly as well. The rush defense last year was superb. It was awesome. It allowed under 100 yards per game, and it honestly was one of the better units in the Big Ten Conference and one of the better rush defenses throughout the nation. But the pass rush was very suspect. For as good as they were in run defense, they only got 22 sacks last year, and the secondary was also not that great. The defense overall pretty solid, but it definitely had its weak areas, especially in the back end. It couldn't really pressure quarterbacks, and it only forced 13 turnovers last season. Again, double figures. However, I think some of those numbers I just mentioned, secondary can definitely improve, pass rush and turnovers, the aggressiveness factor, the momentum changing plays, those can get better there as well. Your top 4 front 7 tacklers, including your star linebacker in Carson Schlesinger, are gone. And Carson Schlesinger, I am going to read what he did off last year because he was simply spectacular for this defense. 136 tackles, 4 sacks, which did lead the team. In fact, no one else had more than 1.5. 3 passes defended, 2 interceptions, 1 forced fumble. He is now a member of the Cleveland Browns, deservedly so. He is a great NFL talent. So who do you have up on that front? Well, Siale Taupaki is going to lead off this defensive front that sees mostly returning pieces playing the big factors here. You do have another piece on the interior in Keanu Williams, who I do like a lot. It's mostly going to be returners playing the bigger roles this year. You do have a couple transfers that at the very least will provide some depth, such as Ketchon Bennett, Ashton Sanders, and Nico DeVilliers. However you pronounce that last name, DeVilliers. I'm going to go with DeVilliers. That's usually how you see names like that pronounced. You do have another, or I should say some other pretty experienced, solid pieces surrounding this front, this defensive front as a whole. And as far as the linebacking unit goes, Jalen Woods is a big-time returner. He was pretty solid for the defense last year, so that is a really good returning piece. He's going to lead this second unit with a good mix, and what that good mix means is a good mix of pieces coming back, a good mix of transfers, and a good mix of experience and young talent. Jalen Woods himself is a redshirt junior. A couple of the transfers they're bringing in, Ben Perry is over from Louisville, where he had 29 sacks last year, 56, or 29 tackles. 29 sacks would be insane. 29 tackles last year, 56 tackles the year prior to that. Isaiah Chisholm is going to come over from Oregon State, where he was a star, 75 tackles with the Beavers last season. So you do see, again, a good mix of transfers to pair with the returners, young and old. I think it could be a pretty solid linebacking unit, and this is a rush defense overall that I expect to take a little bit of a drop off, especially with some of the other pieces like Carson Schlesinger that you did lose, but I do think it's still going to be a pretty solid run defense. The secondary is going to see the most turnover out of any defensive unit. There, to me, is only one notable returner in this defensive backfield, there are two. There are 2 notable returners to me, so I don't know why that says 1. There are probably because of production last year, but there are 2, Croy Stewart and Kanye Clark. Those are 2 guys coming back that I do like a lot, and Stewart probably the one notable one because you look at what Clark did last season. He only did have the 1 tackle. So again, Stewart is that one guy that is coming back with double-digit tackles, had 11 of them last year. Otherwise, there are going to be a lot of transfers to fill in the needs. Andre Jordan, yep, he is coming over from Oregon State, 4 pass defended last year. Key Lawrence, formerly of Oklahoma, formerly of Tennessee, but is transferring over from Ole Miss this prior season. You go back to 2023, had 44 tackles, a couple interceptions with 3 pass defended. And then Cole Martin is coming over from Arizona State, where he got lost in the very, very talented secondary unit, and he'll be coming over here to play ball with the Bruins. As far as your special teams goes, you do have a returning place kicker to be joined by a new transfer punter, and that's your special teams report because kickers are people too. Offensively, again, even though I still think you got a lot of good pieces, it is up to Nico to take that next step forward, and I still have some questions about how good the surrounding pieces overall are going to be for Nico to be able to let this offense flourish, especially on the offensive line. And defensively, I think the rush defense takes a little bit of a step back this year. We'll see by how much. I'm not expecting heaps. I am expecting them to allow over 100 rushing yards per game, but I don't think it's going to be much more than that. Secondary, it has a lot of overturns, so it depends on how those transfers fit and depends on how the younger guys that were in the room last year step up and play in their new roles. Let's take a look at the UCLA 2025 football schedule. It sits right over here. But before we dive on into this, let's look at some numbers right down below me. Odds courtesy of FanDuel. And no, not me telling you to go place your money, but it does provide some good context to how good the odds makers think UCLA is going to be this season. 5.5 is that over-under win total. That is the biggest one to pay attention to. Otherwise, we know it's going to take a lot for them to win the conference or the national championship, let alone get into the college football playoff. Nico led a team in Tennessee to the playoff last year, but I think Tennessee overall had a ton more talent than what UCLA does this year. This first game is going to be very imperative for UCLA, I think, because this is going to be a great test. I do not expect Utah to be as bad of a football team as they were last season. An old Pac-12 matchup that I honestly am going to love watching. Now it's a Big 12, Big 10 battle. Utah is going to bounce back and have a much better season. In fact, I think they're going to bounce back quite nicely and be one of the top teams in the Big 12 conference. Devin Dampier is a great option coming over from New Mexico at the quarterback position. Wayshawn Parker is a really good running back coming over from Washington State, led them in rushing as far as running backs goes, of course, besides John Mateer as a true freshman last season. Totally revamped wide receiver room that I love a lot with Tobias Merriweather, Larry Simmons, Ryan Davis, Creed Whitmore, and some pretty darn solid returners there as well. Defensively, this is a defense that you know what you're going to get out of Kyle Whittingham. If UCLA can win this game and make a statement here, I think you could see UCLA have a pretty darn good season. But I do think Utah's more talented. I think they will be more physical, especially that defensive front. I don't know if this offensive line is going to be able to protect Nico like it needs to for Nico to get the ball out to his weapons, or for Nico to even show us what he has learned and he can do in a UCLA uniform. However, I do think the next 3 games UCLA is going to win, not without some fights though. Going on the road to play UNLV, really important 2-game stretch here. You're coming off a game against Utah in which, hey, let's just say you win that game. You cannot let your guard down against this UNLV team. Even though they are all overhauling every single position group, there's going to be a new guy in every single big role for the most part that is here on this team. They are one of the worst teams in returning production and are building through the transfer portal. Dan Mullen is there now, and say what you want about Dan Mullen. He brings a ton of coaching experience to the group of 5 level, and UNLV is still going to be one of the better teams, in my opinion, in the Mountain West Conference. This is not one where UCLA can lay down and take this one lightly. UNLV is going to compete, even though they're building through the transfer portal. I love a ton of the pieces that they're bringing in there. I do think Dan Mullen is going to find a lot of success in year 1 as a member of the head coach of this Rebel program, but I do think Nico and UCLA do enough to be able to get past UNLV and get that first win. Any way you slice it, I do think they split these first 2 games. So even if they beat Utah, I do think they can have a letdown on the road against UNLV. If they win both of them, I would watch out for UCLA as a potential sleeper team in the Big Ten this season. I do think they're going to beat New Mexico. As mentioned, they do lose Devin Dampier at the quarterback position to the Utah Utes, and New Mexico's replacing a lot of other pieces there as well. They are not going to be a very good team out of the Mountain West ranks. That should be a win for UCLA, and I do think they're going to go on the road and beat Northwestern as well. Now, can Preston Stone improve from what he showed at SMU last year? He obviously showed the talent at SMU the season before, but we'll see if he can figure it out with Northwestern. Overall, I do like the talent that UCLA has got, a lot more than Northwestern, and you can't really factor in home field with Northwestern this year because they're playing in the 15,000 seat stadium on the lake. So Northwestern is a team that I think is still trying to build, still trying to reload. Not a team I like a whole lot this year. I think UCLA going to go on the road and get that job done. Now the schedule becomes very, very difficult, and there are a ton of teams that I like on the schedule a whole lot more than UCLA in conference play. In fact, there are probably only 2 teams that I like less than UCLA on the conference slate this year. One of them I already mentioned here with Northwestern, but this one here, week 6 against Penn State, even though it's at home, I just don't think it's going to matter. I think Penn State's a really, really good football team, and that defense alone, I think, is going to win Penn State the game, especially with Jim Knowles at the helm. You can disguise blitzes, and look at what Jim Knowles did and helped disguise the pressure against Nico in the college football playoff game at Ohio State last year. He'll bring that same thing here. It's a quarterback that Jim Knowles is going to know very, very well. Penn State's got a lot of defensive talent, and offensively, you finally give Drew Aller some weapons on the outside. Katron Allen, Nick Singleton coming back. Yeah, you don't have the Swiss Army knife Tyler Warren anymore. I don't know if it'll matter too much. I think this offense still going to be good. Penn State's still going to be one of the better teams in the country. They are one of the national championship favorites this year for good reason. Think they're going to be pretty darn good. And I think Michigan State takes a step forward this year as well. Second year of Aiden Childs, you get Elijah Tolliver. That's going to come over from Sac State to be the running back for you. I think he's a great option. Pairing with now the true sophomore Nick Marsh after a great freshman campaign. I love love what Jonathan Smith did through the transfer portal. Krishan McCray, Omari Kelly are two phenomenal weapons. Evan Boyd and Rodney Bullard aren't too shabby either. They will more than likely be depth pieces in that wide receiver room. I think it's going to be really, really hard for this UCLA secondary to be able to handle that, especially on the road, and Michigan State gets that win at home. Here's the other team that I don't like as much as UCLA this season. I like UCLA a lot more than Maryland because I think the Terps are really going to struggle once they get into conference play this season. No Billy Edwards. You are revamping your pass catching room. You're revamping your backfield. You're revamping a lot defensively. And I just do not have a lot of confidence in Maryland this year. Now, you do still have some solid pieces, including a freshman quarterback that is in contention to win that starting job. And right now, according to a lot of people, is projected to win that starting job. Again, there's still that quarterback battle that's going to be going on, but Maryland's a team I just think is really going to struggle in the Big Ten Conference this year, and that's going to be a win for the Terps. Or not for the Terps, for the Bruins. That's a loss for the Terps. A win for the Bruins on home turf. That's what I meant to say. On the road against Indiana, Indiana football is not going to be going anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. Curt Cignetti at the helm of that team. Again, Indiana's still very, very dangerous. They're bringing over a quarterback in Fernando Mendoza from Cal that I like a ton. Oh, I like a ton. I like him a lot. I think he's going to be unleashed in this offensive unit. He's got Elijah Surratt as a really elite pass catcher, some really good running back pieces, and even though the defense does lose a lot of its depth, a lot of your heavy hitters such as Aiden Fisher are coming back, and you bring in some nice pieces through the transfer portal. The schedule does get harder, but the team overall could get better. I say could get better. We will definitely see if that's the case, but Indiana, man, is a great team. I don't think Indiana football is going anywhere as long as Curt Cignetti is there. That's a team that I think will beat UCLA in Bloomington. UCLA did beat Nebraska on the road last year. I think the Huskers get their revenge this season. When you take a look at the Matt Rule tenure, year 3 has always been the key for his programs. Year 3 at Temple, bam, they were playing for a conference title and won it. Year 3 at Baylor, bam, they were playing for a conference title and, I think won that too. Yeah, might have even won that too. So year 3 at Nebraska, the trend would show Nebraska is going to play for a conference title this year. I don't know if they're going to get that far, but I think tremendous improvement is expected out of Dylan Raiola. Finally, you get a lone back in Emmett Johnson that I think is going to excel in this room. Wide receiver room I really like, and a defense that, look, you're switching defensive coordinators now with Tony White. I think you lose something special with that. The offense, I don't know what that was. I think something just dropped off my desk. I apologize for that noise. The offense is going to be much more well coached now with Dana Holgorsen as the offensive coordinator. Defense still going to keep its intensity, and it's going to try to play a lot more aggressive this year. I think Nebraska takes a massive step forward, and they beat UCLA, getting their revenge from last season. You're also, much like the game, even though it's against Penn State at home, you're not going to go on the road in Columbus and win that one either. Ohio State's just too good. They got too many pieces. Secondary's not going to be able to defend Jeremiah Smith. Good luck stopping all the blitzes that Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs are going to be able to throw at you, and the Buckeyes absolutely can repeat for a national championship this season. Washington at home. I think Washington's going to be really good this year. Demon Williams, I think, is a great option at the quarterback position. Jonah Coleman might be one of the best running backs in the country, and I expect this defense to be a really good unit as well. And this wide receiver room, not too shabby either. Year 2 under Jed Fish, I do think Washington is going to find a ton of success. And even could be quite the sleeper team here in the Big Ten Conference. And then on the road against your in-state rival and in-city rival, even counterpart, Southern California, I do think this is going to be a loss for UCLA as well. Lincoln Riley may very well be coaching for his job this year, and I think Jade Maeva is going to work out nicely for him. I like a lot of the other weapons that USC does have. Defensively, you saw the defense take a nice step forward last season. I think it takes another one this year, and it leads USC to being a much more competitive team than we've seen in the past couple of years. So 4-8 for UCLA, guys, is going to feel like a very big disappointment to a team that absolutely could take a step step forward this year. I could see them beating Utah. I could see them beating Nebraska at home. If you want to talk about road wins, pretty tough road slate, but they already have a couple. On the road against UNLV is going to be a difficult one, and I could see them going on the road and beating Sparty as well. Again, to me, you got a lot to replace defensively, so we'll see what it looks like and how good are the pieces around Nico going to be, on top of what is his improvement and production look like. So all those are questions to answer. Let me know what you guys think about UCLA in the comment section below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. See all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.